Okay, good morning Queensland. Well, we've just had a briefing from the Bureau of Meteorology as we are expecting some severe weather next week. Now, of course, some of our catchments are already saturated, but most of this severe weather is going to be in far north Queensland and out to the west of our state, and there's going to be incredibly heavy rainfall. So we want people to think very carefully. You know, over the weekend, most of this rain will be coming in early next week, and to think about their preparations. I've asked the Deputy Premier to contact the relevant mayors today to make sure that they have their planning processes in place, and we're at the stage where we're going to lean forward. Once this severe weather event hits, we of course will stand up our Queensland Disaster Management Group. We do not expect this severe weather to be as intense in southeast Queensland, so that is a relief. However, we will be monitoring it very carefully, and of course some of the streams and rivers have been saturated from our earlier weather event. It's very unusual to see this type of situation occurring in far north Queensland, especially this time of year, which is usually near the end of the season, and we are expecting higher rainfall totals than we've seen before in May. So please, this is an advice, if you can put it that way, to people in far north Queensland and out the west. So we're looking at areas around Townsville, Ingham, all the way out to Longreach, Windora, Winton, Barcaldine. I know they've received some rain recently, so they're going to be expecting a lot more. And of course, this rain event will also have some impacts further down to Rocky, Yeppoon, and even maybe to Gladstone. So we'll be keeping people updated. I'll ask you to please listen to the Bureau of Meteorology. They'll be putting up their most up-to-date information over the course of the weekend and leading into next week. But I just wanted Queenslanders to be assured that we're monitoring this situation very carefully. So I'll hand over to David from the Bureau to give you a more in-depth update, and then of course Minister Ryan is here and also the Commissioner. Thank you.
Good morning. As the Premier mentioned, we're going to see increasing showers and thunderstorms develop across Queensland over the coming days. And at this stage, we're expecting this activity to tend to widespread areas of rain, which may become heavy at times during the course of next week. As the Premier mentioned, we've had recent rainfall. This rain event is going to impact many areas of Queensland that were received recent rainfall across northern and western Queensland over the Anzac Day long weekend, and as a result those catchments are going to be more responsive to this rainfall event as they would have been prior to that last event. Localised flash flooding will become a risk during the course of next week, particularly about any of those creeks, streams or falls that have been saturated from recent events over the Anzac Day long weekend or during the course of this wet season, and do tend to respond quickly to any heavy short duration rainfall. At the moment, a flood watch will be considered for numerous catchments across Queensland over the coming days, but at the moment we're anticipating that we'll probably issue a flood watch for some catchments on either Sunday or Monday in anticipation of rainfall developing during next week, with the most likely onset of this rainfall event starting on Tuesday. Got to be mindful that there are many flood warnings still going for many Western Queensland catchments at the moment, and this rainfall event could potentially impact some of those catchments and cause renewed rises, potentially back to where we saw at some levels around the Anzac Day long weekend as well. Of course, be mindful that many watches and warnings will be issued by the Bureau over the course of the weekend or into early next week, and please stay up to date with them as they're issued over the coming days. That's all I had from the Bureau. Thank you very much.
Well, as we've heard from the Premier and the Bureau, there is an expectation of extraordinary weather in some parts of the state. And whilst it's an unusual time of year for that extraordinary weather, can I assure Queenslanders that the usual extraordinary response is already underway? The planning being done by Queensland Fire and Emergency Services and the Queensland Police Service in conjunction with councils is already underway. We're monitoring the situation, and we're ensuring that the appropriate resources will be in the appropriate place for the right time. So I can assure Queenslanders that the State Emergency Service and partner emergency service agencies, along with the Queensland Police Service, are watching this event, they're preparing for this event, and they'll be in place to respond to this event. But we do need the cooperation of Queenslanders. So I'm asking Queenslanders to do what they would do usually, Although it's an unusual time of the year for severe weather, please do what you would do usually, which is watch for the weather conditions. Do not enter floodwaters. There will be some parts of the state which will be prone to flash flooding as a result of this event. So if it's flooded, forget it. Do not enter floodwaters. But also ensure that you're preparing for the event in those areas which may be restricted for supply issues for some time. So particularly around the Western Queensland areas, they're usually really well prepared for supply issues. But please, if you need to stock up on some supplies, please do that. But please also be assured that our emergency services are monitoring supply issues, and if we need to resupply supermarkets or pharmacies, then we've got arrangements in place for that. So please make the appropriate preparations. Please continue to watch the weather warnings, and if you have to be out and about during severe weather, do not make any risky decisions. Always be responsible on the roads. Do not enter floodwaters. If it's flooded, forget it.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning, everyone. As you've heard from a number of people already, we know that this event is coming over the next few days. I ask that people listen to the messaging. Please stay connected. We have had a number of tragedies out of the last event. Some 14 people passed away. And a lot of that was people driving through floodwaters or being caught in floodwaters obviously rising. So I ask that you prepare now, that you plan your trip, and as you've already heard, and I'll reiterate that message, please do not drive through those flooded waters. And to that number again, 14 people passed away as a result of our last weather event. There may be issues with supply. The Minister has touched on this, but there are very, very good systems in place to address those issues. Planning is already well underway across the entire states. Later today, I have the Assistant Commissioners coming together to discuss this, but the local disaster management groups will be talking to their mayors, and also at the district level as well as the state level. So everyone, please be reassured, as always, planning is well underway. We will respond as we always do to this event, but we ask that people please stay connected, please listen to the authorities, listen to those warnings, and always, always, if it's flooded, please forget it. Thank you.
Any questions for the Bureau?
Yes, please.
Yes.
So, we've heard that it's such an unusual event this time of the year. Can you put some more bones on that statement? What's going on? Where's the weather coming from and why?
Yes, I guess in terms of the significance of the event, usually we're not talking about such a widespread rainfall event where we could see widespread 100 to 200 millimetre totals during the course of May. For example, a lot of locations around Queensland, in western and northern parts of the state, the average rainfall for May is around 10 to 20 millimetres. So to receive a 100 to 200 millimetre rainfall event in May, it's not unheard of, but it is very rare for a lot of these locations. I guess the most significant thing about this event for parts of northern and western Queensland, it's going to come on the back just after a fortnight of a recent heavy rainfall event over such a widespread area. So this rainfall at this time of year over such a widespread area, in conjunction with recent rainfall and saturated catchments, means there's going to be any of the small catchments will be very responsive with a heightened flash flood risk, but also where we've got current or recent flooding, they will be more prone to renewed rises with much less rainfall than previously expected.
Are we feeling confident at this stage the southeast will avoid the brunt of any rainfall that comes through?
In terms of the southeast Queensland, we will see an increase in showers and thunderstorms around here over the coming days and into next week. In terms of widespread rainfall, that's going to be, at this stage, is looking less likely, but not mean we're going to be totally out of the woods in the southeast. There will be locally heavy falls around here, and given the wet season we've had around southeast Queensland, again, where we're going to see heavy, short-duration rainfall that could happen, more so on a local scale around the southeast, those catchments are going to be still quite responsive. So there will be a risk of flash flooding around the southeast, but more so on a local scale with any short, sharp bursts of heavy rainfall.
So is it a convergence of a couple of different weather systems that are triggering all of this?
Yeah, so in terms of the weather system that's going to drive this, we're going to see a trough system develop across inland parts of Queensland over the coming days. Essentially, we've got a big upper low pressure system that's going to move across the state and essentially generate this rainfall across the state over the coming days. Again, quite unusual to see this happen during the course of May, with it triggering off such a widespread rainfall event. But at the tail end of the season, it's where you get these big upper low pressure systems still mixing with a bit of that remnant tropical moisture. You can tend to see these rainfall events develop around Queensland.
Is La Nina still influencing this weather event, or the Indian Ocean dipole?
Yeah, so I guess at the moment this event is going to be developing from a low pressure trough and an upper low pressure system, again combining with some of that remnant tropical moisture. In terms of the influences of La Nina, it is still around in the Pacific Ocean at the moment, although in a weakening state. It is contributing to an extent to this rainfall event, and overall all the events we've had across Queensland during the course of this season. As mentioned just then, there's also going to be the added influence of a potential negative Indian Ocean dipole that may influence our weather around Queensland over the coming months, where essentially that weather pattern essentially dictates where we see above normal rainfall around Queensland during our winter and spring months. Not just Queensland, a large area of Queensland over the winter and spring period.
A wet winter? A wet winter?
Yeah, so in terms of the outlook, we're looking at above normal rainfall continuing around much of Queensland over the winter and springtime period. Again, through a combination of the remnant La Nina that's now currently weakening, but also this potential negative Indian Ocean dipole, which does influence and bring about above normal rainfall for much of Queensland. Last season, we had a similar effect, which did lead to us having Queensland's wettest winter since at least 2016. And yeah, a lot of outlooks at the moment are pointing strongly towards above normal rainfall for large parts of Queensland over the coming months. Also got to be mindful when we are talking about above normal for Queensland, we are moving into our dry season as well. So it just means that we're going to see a wetter than normal winter period over the next few months. And I guess the odds of seeing where we do see our heaviest rainfall is always in our summer months. So it just means we're going to see continued top-ups of a lot of our catchments over the winter and springtime period.
Hi.
Is there any update you can provide on the incident that happened in Rocky with the 3-year-old girl?
So thankfully, I do know that she's sitting up responsive. So I've just got briefed on that this morning. So that is exceptional, responsive to everyone that's speaking to her. In terms of the investigation, that is ongoing. I want my staff to be extraordinarily thorough about this to get to the bottom of what occurred in Gracemere. So I haven't got it, updated from a few hours ago, but certainly I expect that will come out over the next couple of days.
Are you looking at anyone else besides the bus driver and the person that's on the bus?
I can't answer that to the extent that if other people are involved, that will be looked at. But at this stage, obviously, that's where the starting point is.
Premier, do you think it's safe for daycare services to continue to operate these bus pickup services given the incident?
I know the Education Minister launched that campaign about look before you lock, and I think it's absolutely critical that people continue to have that ongoing training. I mean, this should not have happened, and I'm very grateful to hear that the young girl is now sitting up and responsive. That I think every Queenslander would be so delighted to hear that news today.
The granddaughter and family want answers. Have you been briefed on the investigation?
Well, as you know, the police will conduct that investigation, so we'll let them do the job, and we look forward to seeing that report.
Premier, the opposition is calling for a review of Queensland's forensics lab.
Yep.
When do you think Queensland will be seeing that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. And I know that the Health Minister is giving that some very serious consideration, and the terms of reference are close to being finalised, and she'll be updating the public on that in the very near future.
Do you think there needs to be a major overhaul of forensic testing in the state?
I think let's get the terms of reference, let's get the investigation underway, the review underway, and then we'll see what the recommendations say.
Obviously, the Shiny Blackburn case brought to light some lab failures. Do you think there's been a chance that other cases have been jeopardised and potentially offenders have been released as a result of this lack of evidence?
Well, there's been no evidence to that point of view, but in terms of the review, let's get the review underway and let's see the results.
GPs are calling for flu vaccines.
Sorry?
GPs are calling for flu vaccines to be rolled out in schools at the moment. Only under 5 can get them for free, and GPs are concerned about the combined flu-corona affecting kids. Is this something you're considering?
Look, I just want to urge Queenslanders that if your GP is saying to get the flu vaccine, you should. I'll be getting mine next week at Parliament House, heading into the flu season. I know the Health Minister, the Chief Health Officer, had theirs this week. But I think we need to take the advice of the Chief Health Officer, and they can give a further update on that. Yeah.
Premier Kathleen Florian from the OIA says she needs either more resources or the laws to be changed. Is that something the government will do and implement?
Yeah, good question. And I think from memory, the Parliamentary Committee is actually looking in to that particular agency. So let's see the outcome of what the Parliamentary Committee decides in relation to that.
Do you think it's likely, given that she said that she needs this?
Oh, I'm quite sure that the Parliamentary Committee would take into account the views that she would present to them. Okay?
Just in regards to the flu vaccines, is it something you're considering rolling out in schools?
I'd like to get some advice, but what we did was in relation to the COVID vaccine is that we rolled that out into areas that weren't having the uptake. But look, I think going into the flu season, people need to get the advice of their local GP in relation to the flu vaccine. And like I said, I'm going to get mine, and I encourage Queenslanders to get theirs as well, especially as the flu season's coming. Last one, yeah.
The Whit Sunday's woman who's missing in Mexico, her family hold grave concerns.
No, I might ask the Police Commissioner if she's familiar with that, but I would understand that if there is someone that is missing, and any Queenslander that goes missing overseas, of course, is a concern, and the family would be naturally worried. Usually, my understanding is that those investigations are conducted by the relevant foreign officers that are over there. It's my understanding. Did you want to add, Commissioner? Yeah. Thank you.
Normally such investigation will be conducted by, that country, but they will liaise also with the Australian Federal Police, and certainly, and then we will liaise with them, so I can follow up on that. But definitely, if it involves someone who should be coming home, was in Queensland, we would be somehow involved in that to find out what's going on and to get some answers back to that family.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.